Before the foundation of modern nations, each a breach method was cast, entrenched, had been sustained, and uses of what it affected had been propagated, and the breaching method maintained roles with nature's demonstrations of that and of the breaching method itself, blamed on other things, others, or selves. This never stopped being off where and how all locations are actually manifest. So note in my videos, I've noted how there are quality aspects in the fact human nature itself as criminal insidiousness / hypercriminal insidiousness. I'm not a lawyer. I also show you the hyper evidential shows that lawyers, all sides in criminal and civil cases, and the interbranch and the intelligence tied to them, and news at the same time, collusion / S with sequence shifts that motivated their rules of the World Trade Center attack. Also, as this breaching method propagated, fact human nature styles regarding the validity of motivations, where and how there is means to discern. Roles with foreign bodies also per hyperforeign, keeping it tactical ulterior from how nature wants and needs us to appreciate how we are individually grouped in species volume and with the other species volumes, because there was a hyper simultaneous too, distinct from the simultaneous. Ugh, vaccines. I teach us things belong. Someone please tell Judge Napolitano it is hyper evidentially recorded the intelligence community next to Fox Connecticut News and next to WFSB also have rules of wire crimes at those locations relative to stories. Also with WTH planting evidences. Forgiveness is because this is not to blame people. This is because these are the acts we have to correct to simultaneously address the foreign and note the state of Connecticut corrections officers and names next to it, and with conversations tied to that, and confessions tied to it. They have rules of the World Trade Center attack with names next to the campuses and on and off them, all of them, intercities. There are connections of them, foreign and domestic military. Forgiveness is because they use the breaching method to pretend that we're speaking about them badly. I'm trying to get you to get them on paper. They've been attaching me to faked and changed audio and video since I was a kid. The Britain Superior Court and Harper Courts, and associated also with Connecticut's District Court. They have a whole bunch of people have been identity theft, frauds, and slanders. The reason the borders are manifest the way they are, the differences of those border police forms. These are multiple agencies and departments with the same house / S involved with wire crimes with them. Also by police reports through time as communications, racketeering, worse than war crimes. Fake conversations with the WFSB had and about the World Trade Center attack. These are CNN sources. Roles being used to measure and maintain a breaching method. Fear God, New York City. You think one science was free there? Smoke for science? There's a breaching method. You always have joined James Madison's communications to us changed. And you left out how everyone was measured and maintained with some of their motivations. That pretend we're fighting against this or that, a T-tax. Meanwhile, slavery was entrenched north and south in colonies. And stayed with the states because that was part of the breaching method. That's why we have to understand James Madison and the founders behind him had a plan to go counter, extort, and force other founders to be at 13 locations. That became the first 13 states that were inside colonies that were more than 13 colonies. And those colonies themselves were divided because the breaching method that came from some ancient times uses all individuals, all group differences voicings, and all humanity voicings remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactics / hyper criminally foreign influence, and or that body is sensed, even if that body is a majority of people, even if that body is everyone. And everyone wants counters to this, but no one realizes because you have all self-guided roles with it, not realizing. So it is it is concentrated at certain locations, certain ways, like where there are databases tied to those locations. Even the courts, all sides in criminal and civil cases, the courts switching and forging names in sequence, planting collusions, planting evidences with the people at the crime scene still. They can't, they're going to explain witch trials. They can't even explain slavery. They blame it on other things other than self. Because they can't allow, they have to pretend things are debatable that aren't. Dear God. Ugh. New York City, please, someone respond from the FBI, the CIA too. They brought in on Facebook too. They have rules with other agencies too. Forget about it. Secret Service, what are they doing at Central Connecticut State University with the names involved with the Wethersfield Police? Something to do all along Route 175 with people, like a Schumack family. A Schumack family is one of the strangers that sought me out. They have roles with child offenders, including medical, sexual. They usually got the difference between and judicial. There are prosecutors, judges, their family members' roles with this. Using those places for torture. They're speaking about crimes. They have rules of predicate acts with facts methods and those crimes. Dear God. Get them on paper, one name in sequence, so we can get them the forgiveness because there's foreign names in overt criminal enterprises increasingly on the campuses. And you can't go and, why didn't you say something? You can't go to the police and talk to them. When I was a kid, they pretended they had conversations with me. I went there. I didn't go there. Then they did it as an adult. They painted themselves in corners with former director of the FBI and his co-defendants too, right before a 2006 case and long-term before it and since. And these are why I found out these are the ones that affected confessions and requests to help from me regarding the Hartford courts and the FBI. They didn't say the word FBI, but I found out it was former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, and people associated with their depositions and tied to them were also the ones on off the World Trade Center for Saudi Arabia to collusion with WFSB, Fox News, at WTNH and Connecticut, other news locations and journalists and their families and their professors at the campuses. Quinnipiac, Central Connecticut State University, that people switching and forging names with the courts because the court's family members have roles with these cities with predicate acts. Dean Judd and his family members, also a Dean Alford from Trinity College with names next to the campuses, have roles with the intelligence community illegitimately with the various natures of drugs and medicines crimes and roles with untimely deaths and time use / estimate for the roles with UConn also involved with this and all the campuses, for example. But they don't follow mandated law. And then they fake conversations with you. A Leahy family pretended through the mail with people with judges and prosecutors that and personally and professionally involved with them speaking fake things into records, uses of all investigators, remotely criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. And when culture is brought up, you guys leave out the breaching methods role. Now, in other words, you leave out all the countries involved with like there are Koreans, something to do, and people from Pakistan with a whole bunch of people tied to Ray Colella. All the other people with the wars, people with state police and providing forensics increasingly involved with wire crimes and Wethersfield police chiefs retired and people associated with them. Further, with a principal child abusers campus and all these confessions he made to me. I didn't even get to make, I made one statement. They called me back with a whole more confessions. Then they hid that. They put fake emails. Then they found out he's involved with upskirt pictures anyway. And they're further on Twitter with this. And these are the people, same ones involved with the World Trade Center, Sandy Hook campuses too. And distinctly from that woman who's a hurt mother, and I'm on her side 1,000%, but not with her roles with the state capitol and her gun narratives and motivations. Because she has motivations that are fake and that are being hid because her sources are criminally foreign influenced. The O'Brien family is between, and more with the principal child abuser proven. I recorded first involved. These is with Wethersfield, Rocky Hill, New Britain, West Hartford, people next to the campuses too involved with this. So they have quote roles with all kinds of natures and qualities of drugs. They have their narratives regarding marijuana and legislation. These are people out of the state capitol with the Harper Hospital, with the military, recorded increasingly confessing and demonstrating things tied to their fake conversations with the Leahy family. A whole bunch of people that work with Harper Hospital's Institute of Living, associated with neighbors near me. They used to live here. O'Brien and the switch of names of the other one with the name Lewis and Cleesa. And these are awesome people, from other areas tied to them with the military. Confessions of people associated with J. Salvatore and Marines. Ones I heard were dishonest. One of them dishonorably discharged from the Marines. I don't know if that's true or not, but his family member, a Jerry Kerr, and who has a son with that name, and I believe they have people from Maine with that name too. But in other words, they have something to do with the shopping centers and the security all along the Berlin Turnpike, and with a former Mayor Gold and other mayors who have roles with foreign domestic military and medical families and overt criminal enterprises at the same time, putting fake things in databases and fake ties between kids in different classes, but they're in the same class at the same time, though, because also roles with uses of the word like class. And so these Democrats and these Republicans have what they call useful idiots, I believe. In other words, oh, thank you. So I'm ending this video, but this is about this is serious things regarding the World Trade Center. Next to the World Trade Center was a Ninth Circuit Court in Manhattan. And the day of the attack, and before that, names on the World Trade Center next to it, and with that court, they've been planting evidences. It was proven afterwards. Legal papers had been post-dated from inside the Ninth Circuit Court. That was proven and led to a 2006 district court case with a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and co-dependents of his, Thaddeus Grabowski, for example, one of the names on off Fox Connecticut News, who is involved with sexual, medical, and judicial abuses of kids along Town Line Drive. I mean, there too, but all along Two Rod Highway and Hangdog Lane and its conjunctions and adjacents. These are also people involved with the state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices, increasingly involved with body dumping spots, criminally foreign influence uses of them, and years later, and timed uses of them intercities. So we're gonna reveal the hyper evidential, because also the nature of the debate is recorded how maintained criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. I'm not even a lawyer. See, but the police departments and the courts, they put people to fake conversations increasingly. Then they have to hide live progression. And then they have to hide their rules of wire crimes with the news. There are wire crime acts and methods. So this is why we have wars. Because they don't have sophistication. What they call sophistication is another, it comes with examples too of why and how we need to be led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. I'm also an expert on the nature of English grammar. And this is why we need more. For example, we need more than one word for a verb. This is why, for example, we can only deal with subjects individually grouped together, except for the value of sequence truth and the value of knowing that we know an extent of the future, like, for example, with the season, but there's an extent of the future that we do not know. See, there are 5 identities of order, And because that has not been known, they effectively keep, behavior racketeering, tactically delusions rot too. Certain type of victim / hyper victim who speaks for order, for example, with courts and enforces that. Where and how too the prisons have stayed rules with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes and tactically delusions rot more than there are streets in our cities. They have rackets, in other words. And so this brings up how the nature of wealth is and treatments of are messed up, but that also brings out how everyone leaves out the foreign and the hyper foreign, which we can discern with the hyper evidential. But we have to have the branches of government follow mandated law, but they can't do it properly because they defended their identities the way this preaching method knew they would, fake, while pretending other for itself. Because they have James Madison's communications, his plan, and the founders behind him that we're told to understand. That who then went to go and get George Washington to agree to their plan, and then they counter extorted and forced names at 13 locations to have no means to defend themselves from the breaching method, which forced everyone to roll, hurting each other, helping each other as collusion, and then to keep as collusions keeping database tied identities of relativity, like for example to meetings where international countries and companies would come in the nature of negotiations and talk about it. If found out they would hurt anyone would speak about it, they're still doing that. That's still criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. So there have been scams. There was also retired police chiefs and their family members. There's ones with the name Mazzucato, involves the ones named Demoro and Mayano, who have roles with various natures of shootings, murder. All sides in criminal and civil cases are used by the breaching method that uses them already having had 3 ways with time, from things in the past they need to hide, things actively, and things progressively to come. Where and how they don't even understand how our peak identities of sophistication have stayed sophistication only as criminal insidiousness natures of it. As collusions with criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and natures of defenses of syntax and identities, like of Americans, like of industries themselves, like of their roles being good or bad. Everyone leaves out the breaching method. Forgiveness is increasingly important because with attribution of guilt, because of where and how that plays roles with this. An O'Brien family and a Cololo family, like for example, they were used by their roles with a whole bunch of different countries and judges and prosecutors. They already had roles with kids camp, people who run kids prisons and things like that. They're all tied to the same house / has to wire crimes, and with other ways to discern. In other words, but they're refusing to identify themselves, and they're switching and forging names because of the retired police chiefs and former director of the FBI associated with them and his defending capacities, but also as his roles with hyper additional natures and methods of organized crime and predicate acts against me intercampuses, intercities. And confessions are also manifest, used by the breaching method, distinctly from the church. But no, the breaching method has defenses of the church and defenses of counters to attacks on the church as collusion, and has exceptions as collusions too, as this breaching method knew. But see, the Old Testament and the Quran were written with parts that we're supposed to use to defend the books the way it says. But no one does that because there are collusions that can be observed with the people who defend the books that know the most about them and the people that counter them. And people with the exceptions have collusion. Like, for example, where there's relative to where people have styles of logic where we could observe left out the predicate acts with facts method, singular, that went with all the other methods of them, were relative to those laws and things that no one would want naturally, like witch trials, regardless of who made them up. They were about this slavery method against our founders, sickly distinctly. And we were supposed to be honest about the extortion of George Washington, but not one has. So increasingly through wars, the generals too have recorded worse than criminal incompetence, remote uses of their styles of fact treatment nature. And just to force a quality of fact treatment nature as criminal insidiousness, but / hypercriminal insidiousness. We're going to have to define this because nature shows it. Please tell Judge Napolitano to have Fox News and WFSB and WTNH fix the fake communications with me, with themselves and with others, and with the interbranch forging and switching names who have been stacking predicate acts with databases, because these are also names with positions at the campuses. And in other words, if they want the forgiveness that we need to be able to not leave out the hyper foreign and foreign, in other words, we have to address how they have roles and insights into exploitation of their roles with their differences, intercultural and intracultural, also as roles with the World Trade Center attack. And everyone doesn't know the extent of their roles with this. They also bring up their own names and our names. See, constantly, this is because constantly all natures of investigations, investigators, their campuses, they were taking the collusions with that use of a location /s since before computers, a database identity of relativity /IES to each person thing, a human fact treatment nature breaching method. So pay attention to the quality of fact treatment nature with the debates and with the premises, because there are sequence shift cover-ups and motivations, narratives pretended legitimate, where legitimate readings of law know that there are would have revealed there are hyper extraterritorial, let alone extraterritorial. You know, I mean, there are extraterritorial motivations and interests, hyper additional to those apparent. And this is how we're going to explain the law. No, because nature itself is going to show us where and how. Ask Judge Napolitano, and Judge Napolitano, please do a video specifically on how a superior court would be seated and take arraignments for the first time, sitting in that seat. Please. Because in other words, I can show them how they're victims / hyper victims, but they want to have a nature of debate that they can't win legitimately. So they have to self-value criminally foreign influence, fact treatment nature, quality, aspect, nature, and collusion with those databases, for example. And with the news at the same time, identity theft, fraud, slanders with them. Because the news has, that's manifest self-value rules with that. Because the breaching method knew that nature would demonstrate itself to us with the real causes being a breaching method of why there are sick natures of law only having been speaking regarding black pupils, whites of eyes, and witch trials, and the significance of them. Other things, others ourselves, is being and has been blamed for it. So a certain type of forgiveness is to understand that. But forgiveness is also for the person who's going to tell right through it. For the Constitution on a bridge. People using words like crimes have roles of predicate acts with facts, long having been collusions with the people with those same crimes and framing innocent people, increasingly. We left out too. The courts are recorded on off the state judicial branch offices, on off the state corrections offices. They have predicate acts with facts roles, needs, and natures shown to them that they have to hide it for other means for others to discern it. It's for how they're motivated to keep everyone so stupid. Pretend that science spoke for New York City, for example. Pretend the science spoke for the suburbs were designed before our founders were born. guys should fear God for what pretends. Yeah. I can just clear. Thank you.